As provinces begin to ease restrictions, there's a need to expand testing for COVID-19. In many places, it's still people with symptoms who get tested. That means people who may have the virus but don't have any symptoms are not being detected and could be spreading COVID-19 without knowing it. Heather Yourex-West reports on one province's efforts to gauge how many people are asymptomatic and why that's key to preparing for a possible second wave.
Robin Adair was tested last week for COVID-19, even though she had no symptoms and no known exposure.
A couple of the supermarkets I shop at in this neighborhood have had cases. So, I'm certainly aware it's been in the neighborhood, but none that I'm aware of directly, no.
Adair was one of 6,000 people to come forward for testing after the province announced last week that it would begin screening community members with no obvious symptoms for the disease. In its first week, Alberta's asymptomatic testing program tested 1,500 people and found 50 cases that were positive.
Surveillance in the general community is a very good idea as well, especially now, because we can, if there's a signal that's available, we can jump on that very quickly to prevent this from spiraling out of control and infecting lots of people.
Alberta's asymptomatic testing program is only open to residents of the Calgary region who have continued to work in the community. That's because most of the province's COVID-19 cases have been from this region. Provincial health officials say it doesn't make sense to expand the program province-wide.
We really want to focus our testing where we get the most clinical value. And so the broad-based testing across the province is unlikely to yield a lot of good clinical information.
Surveillance programs will become a key part of the country's COVID-19 strategy in the weeks ahead, particularly as lockdowns begin to lift. While Alberta is the first to roll out asymptomatic testing at a community level, other jurisdictions have used the strategy to test for outbreaks among high-risk populations, like the homeless, as well as those working and living in long-term care.
It's an expensive investment, but it's a very valuable investment because it pays off in dividends.
Adair, who works at a Chorus-owned radio station, the same company that owns Global News, says she wanted to be tested for her co-workers' sake. Her negative test result giving her, at least for the time being, some extra peace of mind. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
The U.S. President Donald Trump made a surprising admission today. He says he's taking hydroxychloroquine and has been for several weeks. It's an anti-malarial drug. Trump has claimed it can cure or prevent COVID-19. The thing is, there is no scientific proof of that. In fact, there is evidence it can be harmful and can lead to heart problems and even death. Jackson Proskow is with me from Washington. Jackson, give us some context. Where did the president admit to this and why?
Well, Donna, the admission came a short time ago as Trump was actually responding to reporters about that whistleblower testimony from last week in which a government scientist said he was fired for objecting to the promotion of this unproven COVID-19 treatment. Well, Trump continues to insist it is fully effective. He now claims, without proof, that healthcare workers are taking it widely as a preventative measure. And even though he himself does not have COVID-19, he says he too has started taking it.
The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it. Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
When?
Right now, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it. Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. So I have been taking it for about a week and a half.
Every day?
At some point, every day. I take a pill every day. At some point, I'll stop. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have the cure and or the vaccine.
Jackson, the FDA has warned against using this drug outside of a hospital setting. What the president is doing could be dangerous to him and to those who follow his example. Why is he doing this?
Well, it could be a very simple attempt to change the channel or to prove his critics wrong. Remember, Trump was actively promoting this drug and then sort of backed away from it as those studies started to question its efficacy. Really, there were kind of three scenarios at play here. Scenario one is that Trump is, in fact, taking the drug and risking the side effects. Number two is that he's being given a placebo or a very low dose by his doctors. And number 3 is that he's not taking it at all, knowing that there's no way for the public to actually tell if he is or he isn't. At the bottom line here is that it's really a distraction from a pandemic that has now killed 90,000 people in this country. And Donna, it also speaks to the broader issue that keeps coming up time and time again, which is that Trump is prioritizing his own advice against that of scientists and doctors.
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks. A big change of heart from China today. President Xi Jinping told a World Health Organization meeting he now supports an investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. Pressure was mounting. Over 120 countries have joined the call for an independent investigation. The U.S. has accused China and the WHO of trying to conceal the outbreak. Crystal Goomansingh reports.
We must be frank about one of the primary reasons this outbreak spun out of control.
The United States, the current epicenter of the pandemic, is doubling down on its position that the World Health Organization helped China mislead the world.
There was a failure by this organization to obtain the information that the world needed, and that failure cost many lives.
They misled us.
Last month, the White House froze funding payments to the agency, ultimately questioning the effectiveness of the WHO. Xi Jinping again defended his country's actions, saying all along China has acted with openness, transparency, and responsibility. Against the blame game backdrop, a normally bureaucratic meeting of the WHO's governing body became somewhat dramatic. In the end, the WHO agreed to an independent review of its management of the pandemic, even as the vast majority of member nations demonstrated support for the agency. German Chancellor Angela Merkel saying the World Health Organization is the legitimate global institution where all threads come together. The Director General has been deflecting questions about politics for weeks, focusing instead on the virus itself.
The risk remains high, and we have a long road to travel.
South Korea says the WHO needs legal powers. Under current rules, the agency can't enter a country uninvited to investigate, and it can't compel governments to act. China now says it will allow for an impartial investigation once the pandemic is under control, and has pledged $2 billion in support, money that will fill the financial hole left by the U.S. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
The new series that goes inside the COVID-19 pandemic, from the front lines to the everyday heroes helping us cope with the unprecedented change. Coronavirus, the New Reality. A Global News special, Sundays at 7 on Global.